And that brings us to our action agenda, action as necessary or appropriate on matters discussed in executive session. Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve selected employment items shown in Exhibit A for action.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes, any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? I'm going to get this right this time. It is 7-0. Any more motions? All right, that moves us to item 13, approval of the Minority Business Enterprise Utilization Plan, Exhibit G. Dr. Ross.
Madam Chair, members of the board and our community, we bring forth our CFO, Madison Paul, to explain the provision of our procurement policy on minority business enterprise utilization plans. Ms. Paul.
Thank you. Good evening once more. Tonight I'm presenting to you the district's Minority Business Enterprise Utilization Plan. This section is governed by Section 5240 of the district's procurement code as adopted and approved April 2022. This code does discuss the requirements of the plan. I do want to mention a few of those to y'all today. On item 3 discusses the policy statement. It also includes the goal of the district. So since we did adopt the state procurement code, we do also establish a goal of 10% of the district's total dollar amount of funds to be expended on minority businesses. Additionally, as part of this section of the code, it talks about the solicitation of certified minority vendors and the procedures to use when working with minority vendors. So we have seen in the past that it can be a little bit more difficult, and of course with disadvantaged businesses, for them to receive large contracts from a district our size. So we have put in the plan some measures where we can potentially divide some of our larger projects into smaller projects. We have done this in the past. One that can come to mind for me is a landscaping contract where even though we are a very large district, we have 26 sites for potential landscaping opportunities. We could potentially always divide that up and give the chance for some of our smaller businesses to also receive a piece of that contract as well. So we have certainly worked on that in the past, and we'll continue to do that in the future. We also have, as part of our solicitation process, we always go to the minority vendor website from the Office of Small and Minority Business Assistance, and we make sure that we contact as many minority businesses that do work in the areas that we're looking for, to let them know that the solicitation is out there. We also have a link on our website to this directory of the Office of Small and Minority Business Assistance. So we are working on different plans to certainly reach out and hopefully give more small and minority businesses the opportunity to work with District 5. So you have before you the full plan. The administration does recommend approval of the attached plan. This does need to be adopted each year per our our new-ish procurement code. So I would appreciate the approval from the board. I'll welcome any questions.
Do I have a motion before we get into discussion? Mr. Hogan.
I'd like to make a motion that the board approves the administration's recommendation on approval of the attached minority business enterprise utilization plan.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes, any discussion, any questions? Ms. Huddle.
So you talked about like breaking contracts into smaller pieces. Are those set asides, or you know what I'm saying? Like, how, if you do that, how do you guarantee? Is it by size or demographics? How do you ensure that actually helps us reach our goal?
So, I mean, it's just a method, so it doesn't necessarily ensure that we will reach our goal, but it does give businesses the opportunity that may be smaller, that do not have the capital equipment to work on a full landscaping contract of our size, that maybe they could bid on one school, they could bid on one site, they could bid on something like that, and it would break up the contract. Now, we also many times will allow businesses we'll break it up into separate sections, and then you can also bid on the entire contract. So we have seen that in the past as well. Another way that we try to reach more minority and smaller businesses is with our fixed price contracts. So we may go out, we know that we have several painting projects in the district. Instead of going out for just one vendor that could paint the entire district, we may ask for fixed pricing contracts where we would go through a list. And we would, as a job came available, we need a hallway painted at one school, we would go through the list of the approved vendors and then contact them that way. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Satterfield.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what kind of response do we get?
So, I mean, it depends on the contract. It certainly does, and it depends on the amount of vendors that are registered on with the Office of, let me get it right, the Office of Small and Minority Business Assistance. We have found that, since we did adopt the state code, that they have to be certified, and that is somewhat of a hoop to jump through for some of these businesses. They do not necessarily see the benefit of truly getting certified. They could be minority or small, truly be minority owned, but they don't feel the need to go through the process, so they don't actually get to count because they're not listed on the directory at that office. So we just try to do our best with reaching out to them when we think that there is a contract that could be available, and we do our best to try to encourage them to apply when they can.
So we do encourage them to get involved and participate in the bidding business and...
We do, yes, sir. So again, if we have, a specific contract that we know there are vendors out there on the minority business website, we certainly send them the solicitation directly.
So when you say the minority business, is there a recommended list, government approved, when it comes to schools?
So it's actually, the Office of Small and Minority Business Assistance actually has a directory of all of the certified minority businesses within the state. So if you're on that list, then you're considered certified. So we will go to that list and we would send, and they break it up by category. So it could be a plumbing contract, landscaping, whatever you may need, and we will actually push out our solicitation. We always put it on Skibo, we always put it on our website, but we also will push it out to those specific vendors to encourage them to either invite them to bid or submit a response to an RFP.
I know that Dr. Ross was pushing the buy local, shop local thing, and I think it'd be awesome if we had something in place where we had, people in our community that could benefit from, jobs and things that were available. So that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? I have a question. Has the plan that we approved last year, there aren't any differences between this plan and last year?
No, so I do not believe that y'all did actually approve a
Did we
plan
not?
last
Okay,
year.
okay.
So this is the first time this has come to y'all with the new code.
Okay,
So,
okay.
this is, again, some new language that we've really just been made aware of,
Okay.
in the new code. So I do not think that y'all
We did
actually
not,
approved
okay.
a plan. But it is standard, really boilerplate from what the state recommends. And it does have our total controllable dollars with our 10% in there as well.
Okay. Any additional questions? I will call for the vote. There's a motion on the floor. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. And that leads us to several policies. Dr. Ross.
Madam Chair, with your permission, we would like to discuss items 14, 15, 16, and 17 altogether, even though they're first approval of individual policies. And I bring forth our Chief of Academics, Ms. Tina McCaskill, to explain those.
I'm going to ask for a motion first so that we can move right into discussion. Do I have a motion?
Do we need individual motions?
Yeah, just read them all together, yeah, individually. You don't need individual motions.
All right, I'd like to make the motion that the board approves first reading approval of proposed revisions to board policy IKACC, placement of non-accredited private and homeschool secondary students, shown in Exhibit H. Let me go ahead and keep on. First reading approval of proposed revisions to board policy IHCA summer school, Exhibit I. First reading approval of proposed revisions to board policy IJNDAA, distance online and virtual education, Exhibit J. First reading of approved proposed revisions to board policy IKG, secondary education, Exhibit K. Okay.
Do I have a second? Ms. Snipes? And I'm going to open it up for discussion, Ms. McCaskill. And just for clarification, we're reading all of these motions together because they are all related for our Cognia accreditation, as we discussed at our last meeting, that need to just be refined, right?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So are there any questions?
Do we have any questions from last meeting? All right, Mr. Satterfield?
Ms. McCaskill, when it relates to summer school, are we taking students out of district for our summer school?
We have
I know that was a
in-district.
practice in the past.
Right, we have in-district students
So we only have in-district students attending our summer school.
that I'm aware of. I can check into that for sure, but that's all that I'm aware of.
I know that years ago, the districts would have discussions, and they would sort of make a decision which district, like if Newberry and Richland 1 or Richland 2 and District 5 and District 1 were close enough together. One, they would sort of take turns housing, as they called it, summer school. I was just curious if it's just our students currently.
That's all that I'm aware of, yes. We
Okay,
did
thank you.
not have other districts involved.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional discussion? All right, seeing none, I will call for the vote on those policies. All, the ones that, your motion, we'll vote on your motion. All in favor? That motion, all opposed? Okay. So that motion carries 6 and 1 abstention. And then we have one more, 18, the first reading and approval of proposed revisions to board policy IKD honor rolls. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the first reading and approval of proposed revisions to board policy IKD honor rolls, shown in Exhibit L.
Do I have a second? Second. Ms. Barnhart and Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We bring the phrase that we would add that students who are in dual enrollment can also be included in the honor roll. And so Tina McCaskill, Chief of Academics, is here to answer any questions about this revision to the policy.
Do we have any questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Ms. McCaskill.
Thank you.
And that closes out our action agenda.